All right, Mr. Eddy Perez. Thanks for doing this.
My pleasure.
I would do a big intro, but after I seen Dana White walk off the Howie Mandel show, I don't need that happening. But just your your accolades are impressive, and I just have a barrage of questions where I really want to get to know you, the individual, get to know your business practice, and really as I see the trajectory of my own personal future, get some insights from you on some mindset shifts that you go through the process. But rather than taking a 10 minutes to introduce you, give us a little bit of background about yourself, how bad the playoffs were for you, and you.
Well, I mean, when it comes to the playoffs, I don't expect my Cowboys to win it outside of lightning in a bottle or the passing of Jerry Jones. So I feel like we need a new GM. That's just me being candid. My background, grew up here in Atlanta. First was a stockbroker, got in the mortgage business in 2002. As an originator, 2005, I opened up my own broker shop. 2008, I became a mortgage lender. February of 2008, during the crash, actually later this week, will mark, God, what is it at now? 16 years that I've been on this journey as a mortgage lender. If you include my broker days, which is around the same time 3 years earlier, I'm at 19 years being an entrepreneur. And, didn't have wealthy parents, didn't have anything, did it the old-fashioned way, had a phenomenal support system, phenomenal family. However, when it came to capital, just bootstrapped it. Kept everything in the organization, just kept growing it, and really just, tripled down on myself and all of us that were a part of it, and just lived up. And that's it.
I love that. Well, thanks for sharing. I think I read in your bio that your dad immigrated from Cuba. What was that? What was that transition like? I'm first generation Mexican American.
Both my parents did.
Both your parents did. Can you talk about what that lifestyle was like growing up? Both your parents. What was that lifestyle like growing up as a first generation Cuban American?
Them in Cuba or myself?
For yourself.
So from my perspective.
Correct.
Like my perspective, like what it was for me.
So for example, like I look at my parents' journey and I feel like I owe it to them, right? Like I tell my staff, I tell my family, I tell my friends, dude, for me not to succeed, that's a slap in the face to my mother and to my father, who they came over at 13 years old. They went straight to warehouse working, and for me to sit here and cry about interest rates are too high, or it's too cold, or it's too hot, or whatever. The sacrifice they made to get here so that I could live in an air-conditioned house in a gated community and raise my daughter in private school. Like, that's insane. For me to not give it 100% every day, it's just ridiculous. And I use that, coming of age for them sometimes as my fuel. And when I get down on myself, I use that as leverage to say, hey, I'm not letting their sacrifice go to waste. Right. In your
we share a very similar sentiment. I'll probably tell you. Yeah, I was going to say probably most first generation, no matter what ethnicity, probably have a very similar feeling. And I've grabbed that from people, not just Latinos like us. I've heard it from people that are Arabic that came here, even people that came from Europe, that they feel like the sacrifice that their families made for them, to your point, they really do owe it. They owe it to pay it forward, to really pay homage to them by creating such a powerful legacy behind it, but not because of the more giving back nature. It's more about honoring them and the roads that they challenged and the roads that they took, because to your point, we were born here. It's a lot easier than somebody who comes here. And I'm not sure what age your parents came here, but mine were in their 20s. And even though that's young, it's tough to come to a country and not have a language and not have a barrier. And in my father's case, he was the first one here, so he didn't have anybody. He was homeless his first week at the beach. Luckily, as he always says, it was Miami. It was warm, even though it was November. So, but yeah, no, I feel like we not only owe it to our families, I feel like we owe it to this country. that gave our families the second chance, and more importantly, gave us all this just beautiful opportunity. That's is for the 7.3 billion people not in this country. It's really about the American gift, because once you're here, it's a gift, and it's really about what you do with it. A gift doesn't mean that it's, Olay, everything just lines up for you. It doesn't mean you have to not go out, but it's kind of like, as I like to say, a great pair of jeans that you get at Christmas as a kid that were the trendiest ones, the nicest ones, whatever they did for you that really made you feel like you were a part about being this country. And you take a lot of pride in that. You feel proud. And, how do you really use that? What do you do to demonstrate that?
Yeah. I mean, I think you define jumping social classes, right? And really chasing the American dream. When I look at society, I look at it, I have the MBS chart from MBS Highway up right now, but I look at it as a support and the resistance all the time in just social classes, right? And as we try to break through barriers and break through into the next level of support and resistance, like something's got to happen to take you into that transition, right? And it's like,
sure,
they come in here and you're scrapping, your parents are scrapping, and maybe in your childhood you're scrapping and you're just trying to figure it out. And then it takes one, right? And it takes one to continuously try to jump in. There's these barriers that put in front of us, or these investments that people make in us, these sacrifices that we have to take. And, I don't know. I just, when I read that about you, I was like, oh man, here we go. This is someone who might understand that journey. What are some of the hardest barriers that you had to break through? What are some of the hardest resistance that you had to face coming up, say, as a stockbroker, and then transitioning into mortgage and really getting to where you're at right now?
I'm going to tell you, no matter what barrier, it's always with yourself. It's always with the eyeballs in the mirror. And I'm not talking about no imposter syndrome or anything, because fortunately, my parents were very, very amazing parents who let me know that everything's possible. Look, we've come here. My dad started his own business. My dad's English. My mom's English. My dad's passed, but my mom's still alive, still very broken. And as they used to say, that we accomplished more than a lot of Americans that have been here multiple generations, because to your point, we went out and worked, we became resilient. We didn't leave ourselves an option to failure, because we had already seen failure back in our country, and we didn't want to have to go back to that. So there's something to be said about breaking through barriers when you don't leave yourself any choices. I think that's where people leave themselves too many timeouts, or I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it tomorrow. Life's pretty simple. I didn't say it was easy, but life is simple. It just requires a lot of discipline. And the best way to have discipline is consistency, and just to work to get a little bit better every day. I know that sounds overwhelming. However, it's not overwhelming if you do it with the philosophy of, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Don't look at the whole piece. Don't look at your whole year. Measure it in certain time periods and certain seasons. And that'll allow you to know if you need to put in more, you need to put in less, or if you're doing really, really well, to keep going and even go harder. So breaking through any barrier, I'm going to tell you, is really your own. Because look at what Elon Musk has done as an example. He was in South Africa till he came here for college and all that. And, South Africa, he immigrated to this country. Anything's possible. It doesn't mean that you're not going to need a lot of people. It doesn't mean you're not going to need mentors, role models. It doesn't mean that you're not going to have to lift a lot of people up for their sake, not yours. I'm not saying that. However, it's all possible if you bring people along and you keep them engaged and you keep sharing the vision over and over. The belief, purpose, goal, vision, and mission is very powerful. However, that's how you break through barriers. It's really going to be about you versus you. A lot of folks is going to tell you the competition is your enemy. I'm going to actually tell you the competition is a gift, because they set the barriers. For somebody, I'm showing my age, that grew up in the 90s, Jordan doesn't exist without the bad boys. The Jordan rules, he doesn't hire Tim Grover. He doesn't put on the muscle. He stays the same structure. You see some of the challenge, some of these athletes that don't get to that next level, Michael Jordan, they say, why didn't they? They didn't keep evolving themselves. They may have just rest on their laurels, or not invested in their bodies, which is needed, especially when your body is what gets you all your dollars and all your accomplishments in the sports world. So that's it. It's really going to be you versus you at all times, every day, every second, and don't think anything else.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you phrase it, because these professional, Tim Grover, Relentless, one of the best books I've ever read. But I mean, just a stud. I'm coached by like Ben Anderson, has a baseball background. I believe you do too. And I was in one of my coaching sessions, I was talking to him. I go, man, this next level is going to take everything. This next level is going to change. Is going to have to require a change in my diet. It's going to have to require a change in the time I wake up. It's going to have to require a change in everything that I do, in the investments in time and who I give my time to. I give you an example. I've been playing with like at what time to eat and what to eat. And so I started testing, like, okay, do I fast 18 hours? Do I fast 24 hours? Like, and then when I break my fast, what's the most optimal meal? So I started playing with all these different meals. And like, I've settled that if I fast through 12 o'clock, which can put me at an 18-hour fast, and I break it with Greek yogurt, berries, and nuts, I don't have a crash, and I can get through to my 6 p.m. meal. And so it's nice. Like, okay, so now I'm testing my workouts, right? Like, okay, am I working out too much? Am I working out too little? I pride myself in 2.5-hour workouts every day. I don't really take a day off. I'm just overweight because I like burritos. But but really,
I get it.
And now it's like, oh man, if I want to get to the level where I want to compete with these guys, with the Eddys, with the Bands, with the Joe Shalaby, if I want to compete at the highest level, then I cannot have bad fuel. I cannot have any mistakes. My daughter's going to Disney World, and when that conversation was like, "Are you going?" It's like the bills don't stop, but most importantly, I have an empire to build. My investment is in time to work, so that you girls can go have a great time at Disney World. Send me pictures, send me videos, and Daddy will be keeping the doors open. When you think about your time, like, at what points do you say, like, do you break up your time throughout the day to say, I have 8-hour workday or 10-hour workday, and then I fully invest in my family from this time to this time? I have this much time in the morning for myself. Like, what does time look like for you? And like, how do you break it up? And have you taken time to optimize your schedule so that you can have the most productive day? Or is that even a thing that?
No. That is a huge reality. When you talk about consistency, you talk about discipline, you talk about regimen. And I firmly believe your regimen doesn't have to be so vigorous that every Monday at 2 o'clock, you got to do something, for example. I'm just throwing something out there as a hypothetical. However, yeah, I'm a big proponent of sleep. You'll see a lot of leaders out there that say you don't need to sleep. That's very untrue and unwise. Sleep is cheat code, just like water intake, diet, everything of that nature, supplements, how you fuel your body. Very wise of you to talk about intermittent fasting. I personally take 16 hours off every day. And I started doing that 5 years ago, and that revolutionized me when it comes to energy and management. To your point, I track my sleep, I track my activity. I even though I'm not diabetic, I track my glucose. I'm even now tracking what to eat with the lumen every day, because it really depends on the CO2s in your body, and really learning how to biohack yourself. Because to your point, the greatest thing you can do is cheat time. You can't defeat time, but you can cheat time. And the greatest way to cheat time is by making yourself stronger, better, quicker, and faster. And the only way to do that is to really invest in yourself. And however, yeah, there's a complete regimen. Depending on the day, I get up anywhere from somewhere in the 4 to 5 something range, just depending on the day, depending if I do have a workout that day, if I don't have a workout that day in the morning. Because I commend anybody that works out in the evening. I really do. The only time I can work out in the evening or midday is if I'm doing 2-a-days, which I throw 2-a-day periods every year. I can't do it, but first thing. And first thing, not first thing in the morning. I like to give myself at least a good hour and a half before I work out to really get the engine going. And what I mean by that is from from prayer, silence, meditation, affirmations, visualization. Even depending on certain workout days, I have a goal of 20,000 push-ups this year. Well, some people say that's a little crazy. That's just 55 a day, and I haven't missed it. There's been a couple days I haven't hit 55, but then I've made it up and even gone higher. Days that I'm doing chest with my trainer, I'm not going to do push-ups till later in the day. So I stay on my routine, and I try to work out at least 5-6 days a week per day. I mean, not per day, 5 or 6 days a week. And then sometimes I do 2-a-days in there to really boost up the metabolism. Because if Jeff Bezos tells you that he needs to be in bed 8 hours a day, that because he wants his 16 hours to be crisp, you gotta, document it out. And yeah, definitely with my kids, I take them to school in the morning, depending on which day I take which kid. My oldest, she drives to school now because she's old enough. However, to your point, if you're going to be around home 2 to 3 hours a day, somewhere in that ballpark, you don't have time to be tired. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you've fueled your body from sleep, water, diet, everything, so that, say it's 16 hours you're up or 17 hours that you're up, that you are the greatest 16, 17 hours, and not, oh, I need to work till midnight. I get in the early years, I did some of that crazy stuff in my 20s. I slept on the floor of my office 18, 19 years ago. Instead of going to lunch, I'd eat for 5 minutes and nap for an hour. I'd go to bed at 11 and wake up at 4 in the morning and go to the gym. I really ran hard. However, if I went back in time, I would have changed that, because I think at times I wasn't making the best decisions, or I was just running out of gas every day because of that. And, trying to drink energy drinks, which is just loading up on caffeine to try to keep you awake. I just don't think the body is in the best position to have the most reflection and awareness when needing to make those decisions.
Oh, I love that. God, I love that. How much when you're working 11, 12, 18-hour days, at what point do you look around and say, was it a solopreneur type of venture when you're doing that, where you're just doing it all yourself? And like, at what point do you decide I can have people do my job and maybe I can work 10 hours efficiently and now start to scale by hiring people to do the jobs that aren't just worth my time?
Man, that's a journey. That's a journey of mistakes, and it's really up to you. I am not a control freak. I am a believer, very simply, because this is not even I'm a believer. This is a fact. The only thing that you truly control in your life is your mindset. And your mindset being what you put in your mind, how you treat your mind, what you do with your mind. That is it. And with that nature, I already knew years ago that I was going to have to bring people along. Now, that's very vulnerable and it's tough. And it was still a learning process, because I was always a big fan in being a doer. Because I think that's one of the challenges out there, is a lot of people just don't do the work. They just won't do it for whatever reason. And look, it's a lot simpler to be a huge doer and then slowly learn how to be a delegator than always a delegator. Because at some point in time, people are going to be like, wait a second, you never did any of this. Why am I going to listen to you? Why am I going to believe in you? Why? Oh, so you just tell people what to do and you sit around, because that's essentially, so then you have to find new things. Like now I spend a lot more time on podcast branding, growing out there, engaging, bringing people together, more of that marketing and branding side, business development side of the CEO's duty. The days of, leading sales or leading ops, yeah, they report to me, but I've got leaders that are essentially CEOs of that realm. And you do have to empower those people, because there's a great saying: if you want to go somewhere fast, go alone. If you want to go somewhere far, go together. And I'm a firm believer in that. As well as, the more you show the way out there, the more influence you have in a positive way. You see, I think people would call that control. You don't, unless you use some sort of force, which that's a force control. So I wouldn't say that that's control in itself. That's just using force, which you see out there. The only thing you control is truly your mindset. That's it. I know a lot of people don't want to really digest that, because then they feel like, oh, I can't control it. You can have heavy influence, and the bigger you grow and the more you show the way, your influence can kind of provide that shade per se. But in the end, if somebody doesn't want to do it, they're not going to do it. And if they do it temporarily, they'll find a way to get around it and get resentful.
Do you, when you're hiring, is it more skill based or like culture character based? And so, like, what I mean by that, are you looking for top talent? I don't care, what they smell like, look like, drink like. If they're the top, they're the best programmer, if they're the best loan officer, I'm bringing them in. Or is it more of, you don't fit my system? You got to fit in with the culture of the company.
Yeah, you got to fit in with the culture only because you got to, and look, our culture is very open-minded. You got to listen to people. It doesn't mean that they have to be on the bandwagon like a cult at all. I'm not saying that. I actually believe in candor. Radical candor leads to transparency. You just have to be, that's part of the culture. You need to speak up. And if you're not going to speak up and be disgruntled, this isn't your place, because we actually give people 5, 6 different avenues to speak up. Now, some people, no matter what, will do a great job and not speak up because a ghost of leaders past, and you have to just understand that. However, it's easier if you're going to compromise on anything, compromise on skills, because you can teach it, versus character. You can never go wrong with character. You can go wrong with just skills, because nobody wants to admit this, but they may be toxic. You have no idea what their experiences are that may be toxic. Maybe somebody wronged them ages ago, and after that, they've got a vendetta. That happens a lot more than people think. A lot of people they lack self-awareness. So that's one thing that I learned from my family. I'm sure you did too. When you come from immigrants, self-awareness is actually one of the greatest skills that they teach you, because it's always understanding the surroundings and what led to it, because something led to their own surroundings that caused them essentially to lose their country or have to leave their country for better opportunities. So you're really, really trained at a young age to really spot these things. And sadly, most of humanity's challenges are self-sabotage and the stories that they tell themselves.
Yeah, 100%. I can't stop telling people, like, this is the best time ever to be alive. You can order Uber Eats and have warm cookies and cold milk delivered at the exact same time. You know how easy that is? Do you know the type of sacrifices and investment that had to go through so that you can have a phone, that you can press some buttons that are completely imaginary? He's just touching a screen, and some guy shows up with milk and cookies. The amount of things that had to go through in order for that to happen, the amount of investment our ancestors had to make into the development of us, like, it's insane. But they continue to develop, and they continue to give us these opportunities. And you don't have to answer this question, but it's bogging down my brain from wanting to ask you mortgage questions, because when I talk to people and they talk about socialism, and they talk about the current state, and they talk down on our country, and they say, well, we should be more socialist, or we should be tearing towards communism rather than capitalism. You don't have to answer this, but because you have the Cuban background, I tell people, go to Cuba.
I'll be happy to answer anything.
What is your perspective when you hear stuff like that? And can you talk about your personal experience with having that type of connection to a socialist economy versus a capitalistic economy?
So Cubans have a very unique knowledge base, is probably what I would call, from experiences. You see, Cubans went from fascism. A lot of people don't understand that, which a lot of people, to understand it better, was essentially Adolf Hitler's model. And then the next one is, we went from fascism, from one dictator type to the next one. And as much as you hear people out there talk about socialism and communism, we should move to that. That business model has failed significantly. The greatest concern that people need to worry about today is fascism, because even the communists aren't communist anymore outside of Cuba and North Korea. And what do I mean by that? See, to be a communist, you owned all the lands. You have to understand what it means, that only the few in the state, in the government, can control everything, because humanity will absolutely corrupt itself, and it can't protect itself. Fascism is very dangerous, the Adolf Hitler model, because what it does is it creates crony capitalism. So what they say is, okay, we know that owning everything really isn't the way, but we need enough capitalism to exist, where people can see that they can make it. But here's the key part, and this was what happened in Cuba first, and this is what led to communism. You cross the state for whatever reason, you do something against the crony capitalists, they take you out. And that's the same thing with communism. You speak against the government because they own everything, they take you out. That's kind of, I always say, Joseph Stalin, pretty much the king of, he wasn't the first, it was Vladimir Lenin, but he pretty much is what put communism on the map. And what a lot of people are very unaware of, the concentration camps of World War II, Germany, were from the gulags in Russia that he had put up first. And then you had fascism of Adolf Hitler, where you got to grow this machine. So what I'm going to tell you is anybody who's talking about communism or socialism out there really isn't watching what's really going on. The challenge is, from Russia to China to all these countries, it's fascism that's really on the rise. It doesn't seem that way because people aren't taking away your property rights. And, even in China, they now will let you own land. Well, that means it's not communism. You can't own as much as the government, but they still own you land. And they've let a lot of people prosper, less than what capitalism would. However, it's enough to let people know, okay, there's opportunity, because when there's no opportunity is how every time it falls and it just goes to trash. Similar to Venezuela. Venezuela is the Cuban story 40 years later. That's what I would tell people, is that they need to learn more about fascism and crony capitalism, because that's where the real dangers are, because people will amass a lot of authority, and authority with capitalism is very dangerous. Look, America had the chance to fall into that if it wasn't for Theodore Roosevelt in the early 1900s when he busted up some of these companies. Because that's what those other companies do, those countries do. They have maybe 10 companies that are huge. It's very dangerous when you only have a couple, because then the state can control them, or they can control the state. And what happens usually is the state will come in because they have the military, and they'll make you do the things because you're rich, you're happy, you don't really care. So that's why I tell you is really Cubans have a unique perspective, because we went from fascism, Adolf Hitler's model, to the communism, the Russian model. And I'm going to tell you, they both lead to a lot of travesty and destruction at the end, because at the end, it's about controlling people, like you said, instead of freedom's tough. Freedom allows a lot of boundaries, but you can't compromise it, because freedom is really liberty meets self-responsibility. I think that's where some people confuse freedom. They believe it just means liberty when it doesn't. It also means self-responsibility. What am I going to do better? What am I going to hold myself to a standard? So that's what I'd answer that is, the people that are out there, they really haven't done their homework, and they don't really know what's going on, because even though China's communist, they've moved to fascism. They just don't call it that, because if more and more people start calling it fascism, which it really is, everybody remembers Adolf Hitler and what happened very, very fast. Faster than even though the communists have done just as much atrocities. However, that one is so violent and remembered so much more that people would know instantly, oh Lord, we've got another Hitler on our case. And that would garner a lot of attention. So that's why they now call it socialism. And it's not. It's not at all. It's crony capitalism, which is far more dangerous. They're both dangerous. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to pick either of them. I will take capitalism and all its challenges. However, those two just lead to human disasters.
And it's a tale as old as time. People, when Hitler was on the rise, he had brought Germany back from the demise of World War I. He used capitalistic ideologies to lead into fascism.
And he wanted to blame somebody. He played the victim. I'm here to save you. You were oppressed. America's imperialism because of the penalties. Mind you, we started World War I, but no, don't hold us accountable. The penalties were too severe. Now, do I think the Treaty of Versailles, the penalties were probably a little bit too severe? However, World War II started the day that Treaty of Versailles started, because that's what happens in populism. When somebody's oppressed, they later become the oppressor. That's exactly what went down there. And that's what people got to watch out. And that can happen in anything. That can even happen in, I don't know, sports, business, all that. It can really rise up and do all that stuff. The reason why history is so important is not because it gives you clues into the personality traits and the behaviors that led to certain things, positive and negative. So then you could spot it quicker and you could have more awareness.
When you see companies like Vanguard, State Street, these major hedge funds controlling such a big ownership.
I commend you. You've done your homework. You missed one other one, but yeah, you just named 60 trillion or something like that, 50 trillion controlled. BlackRock. Yeah, you nailed all three of them. That's dangerous, man. That's where crony capitalism can really lead to fascism right there.
Because I'm trying to figure out who controls this. Like my brain can't stop thinking like, okay, all this money that's getting injected into the economy, where did it go? Did it just disappear? When I'm seeing the debt crisis escalate, like who's going to pay for this? People don't take personal responsibility. So what is the end game? Like what are we ultimately gearing towards? Whoever's pulling the strings, like where is this actually going? And where is all the profit? Like it can't be just profit driven, because if it causes a demise of capitalism or the United States, well, then all of that work was for nothing, because then you're not going to be able to enjoy certain pleasures unless it is purely a perspective of, I want to damage the world or I want to damage the population. Like, are we in this battle of the bourgeoisie versus the proletarian? Are these three entities?
It's not definitely that Marxism used. It's not that. It's I do believe that we're battling for our soul. That I'll tell you. But the soul starts with the individual. I think a lot of people every day walk through our lives that are battling on their own souls and they don't know it. And what I mean by that is, do I go the light or do I go to the dark? That's really what it goes down to.
I think we forgot about just abiding by the social contract, right? John Locke had this brilliant idea, and we just abide by each other. Take personal responsibility and do what's best for others as well as yourself. And if we can do that, we're going to have a great society. And we don't need this regulation if we can all take personal responsibility to just do what the right thing is. And if you do it all the time, it's not even difficult because you know the answer. Just do what feels right. Mr. Eddy, this is amazing. And I want to just end on one topic.
Please call me Eddy. You'll really make me feel old if you say Mr. Eddy, but I appreciate the kindness.
It's such a respect thing.
No, I get it. That's why I'm giving you permission. You didn't violate respect if I told you it's okay just to call me Eddy.
Okay, I appreciate that. It's just a thing, man, that I do. It's a respect thing. It's not trying to age anybody. It's just a Mr. Mrs.
I know. No, I understand the respect thing. I just want to let you know that it's okay. I've given you the permission to not have to do it.
Thank you, Eddy. Where do you see, I'm hoping you can address this twofold, because most of the people that are going to watch this are loan officers. If you were a loan officer right now, given the current state of where rates are, where the economy is, what are three non-negotiables they have to employ every single day to keep their business growing? And do you ever see a turn in the marketplace when do you, I guess the better question is, when do you see a turn in the marketplace to say it's going to be a little bit easier, or will it ever go back to where it's just kind of like a constant flow and it's not so much of a battle? I feel like mortgages right now, the battle's twofold. The loans are hard, which is why we love your company. We got one funding.
What's funny is somebody said it best. We make the hard loans easy, and the easy loans are just easy. That's what we tell people all the time.
Well, and you guys have become one of our top go-tos, right? Like I'm 5 months into brokering. I come from EPM and from direct lending for all these years, and you guys have quickly become our go-to. Lito, who's your rep, has been phenomenal.
No, he does a phenomenal job. But to answer your question, let me start with some context first. I think there are some harsh realities that not just the originators, the leadership, and the whole mortgage industry need to come to accept. And they are going down this road called denial is no longer just a river in Egypt. Because you have to understand cause and effect. Once again, history. So starting in 2008, we went into quantitative easing, QE, all the way till 22. 14 years. So the last market, and what I've learned from some of the veterans that have mentored me and role models in the industry, about every 14, 16 years, there's a little bit of a change of the guard. And it's kind of like, why, Eddie? Why is there a change of the guard? It's very similar to sports. Sports is about a 22 to 37-year-old's game, 15-year run. Well, why is that in business? It really takes you anywhere from 15, 20 years to really get to the top of what I call the basement, which is the bottom, but to executive leadership, ownership, anything like that. Now, you can start it earlier. However, I'm very honest when I say, I'm 19 years in. The first 10 years, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I knew how to originate. I knew how to get loans in the door, but then I was wondering, why do I keep having all these headaches?
That's where I'm at right now.
So you don't know what the hell you're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Go find out how the hell to do it. And so there's always a big buildup and then a situation that happens. So what happens is everybody 58 and above who had a great 14, 15, 20-year career, outside of that. So when you talk about their 20-year buildup, they've had a 35-year run. No different than an athlete that started playing at 5, 37. That's a 32-year buildup. It's time to hang it up. They've done well financially, move on to new things. They usually become grandparents at that age. And what happens is the younger generation that's probably in their upper 30s, that's been in the game 10, 15 years or more, starts to enter those executive and ownership levels in the sense of they also understand what they're doing. They may have the titles, but they have the titles before they know what the job is.
Right.
So you have that run. They say the greatest executive teams are anywhere from 42 to 57. That's like the 15-year run. So you have kind of that when you're really descending into that 38 to 58. That's kind of the 20 years because mix and max a couple of those things. So I say that because that whole last guard had nothing but quantitative easing, and we're going to have nothing but quantitative tightening. And what I mean by that is it's not going to return to the way it was because guess what? You shouldn't want it to. We don't have enough inventory. The first time home buyer is already getting squeezed. The second time home buyer is getting squeezed. That is going to lead to a catastrophe. The higher interest rates I said in 2001 would be a good thing. Now, why would it be a good thing? I'm not trying to impose higher payments on consumers. I have a deep passion. That's why I'm a firm believer in borrowers are best. However, the lunacy of 21, where people are paying $100,000, $200,000 overpriced, even though if you did the math, didn't matter if you're getting a 3% rate, your return on your dollars were not there. That we needed the ego buying to leave, and the people that really wanted to be homeowners and really wanted to possibly, if they put themselves in a situation which is okay, to do a cash out to restructure their life and get their life going forward completely. Everybody falls down. It's how you recover. No judgment at all. That's what we needed in the market. Well, to be honest, that's the same thing we need in the origination space. That's the same things we need in the operational space. People that are willing to have unreasonable hospitality. Therefore, 3 things, given those informations. A, you better be on social, and you better be authentic, and you better be doing video. Forget it. You better be doing video.
Yeah, 100.
And in that, you better be commenting on other people's stuff. If you like something, you didn't do anything. I just want you to know that. You didn't do anything. If you look at somebody's video and don't comment, you didn't do anything either. It's those imaginary ghost people that watch that later walk up to you and say something. Second of all, social far. Second of all, people need to read 6 to 10 hours a week. Books, but more importantly, materials on the industry or what's going on. Because miraculously, when you read a lot of what's going on out there, you can decipher the noise to the realities, and then you can grow and move forward and everything of that nature. That's how you become an expert. You don't become an expert overnight. You become an expert. And then third, especially from the origination side, and this is because of the crash once again, there were no LOAs before the crash. There were processors that did 40, 50 loans. The industry got a little bit too fat on the margins. And that's not coming back either. Because why? We refinance people too much and the bondholders aren't paying as much for yield. Therefore, you can't hide anymore from your margin that buries a lot of bad habits. So originators need to learn how to structure loans. That's the number one problem. When I was in the business, you had to structure your loan. You didn't know how to structure it and it showed up to processing, they threw you out. They didn't do it for you. They may throw a bone here and there for you. They may aid here and there. But if you misqualified the income, if you misqualified the product, if you misqualified the assets, that was just on you. And you didn't rely on somebody else to do it for you. Those are the three things. They need to know their guides. And look, here's the great news I'm going to tell you. Less who don't. There's plenty of organizations, and for the lenders out there, that have scenarios. They have underwriters that will literally tell you yay, nay, or how to do it. It's a little bit wiser if you get to read it yourself. And look, I've read all those manuals. They're boring. I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're not. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I probably would rather get kicked in the head once every other day than read some of that stuff. However, what I'll tell you is then you don't have to be dependent on anybody. And that's where I say those are the three things that allow you to be self-responsible, where you're not dictated to one organization, or you're not dictated to one processor, or you're not dictated to one system. You are free, truly free. You have liberty, but it takes the biggest part of self-responsibility, and people just don't want to do that because they're waiting for the Fed to cut interest rates to save them. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody. You're not going to get quantitative easing. You're going to get more quantitative tightening.
I'm with you 100% that the higher rates were great.
Do what?
I'm with you 100% that the higher rates were great. I said Jerome Powell did the right thing. Everyone's
he did the right thing by the fellow Americans. Nobody likes it, but he had to curb inflation and really curb the outlandish prices, because what was going to happen? People were going to keep paying overprice. And then if there was a correction, then they were going to start strategically defaulting, like already happened in 2008. And that's a horrible movie. And guess what? We don't have enough supply. So you can make things a little bit like a price, maybe not the house, but you can make rates a little bit higher, and that completely okay and stabilizes the market for the first-time home buyer and second-time home buyer. This market isn't going to get built by the third and fourth and fifth-time home buyers because they're going to wait till interest rates or something or whatever they want to. But the person who wants to really put their family in a new position, maybe they came from people that never owned a home, or maybe they do and they want to be a part of that culture and that journey. So that's what originators need to do, because they also need to know that it's, I thought when the Fed said at the end of last year that they were going to cut 3 times this year, I thought that was premature. And then inflation showed up last week, and now everybody's pretty pumped up in January, and now they're not pumped up as much anymore. And that's just a harsh reality. I hate to say it because, again, I'll say it. Nobody's coming to save you except for yourself. There's plenty of business to go around. There's going to be 5.3 million units this year, give or take. It's just, there may be more fallout. There may be more people that are not the lifers. That this is a very special career, what we get to do for people, including veterans. It's very special what we get to do. If you're not willing to be all in, if you're not willing to give it your absolute best, you shouldn't be here. And if you are, that's completely fine. I'm not judging you, but do not expect consistent results. Expect a roller coaster.
That's the hardest part in this industry, is to not get distracted by all the other chaos that goes on. I handed out a listing yesterday to an agent, and the question I got was, "You have a real estate license?" I go, "But I'm not a real estate agent. I'm a mortgage broker. I do mortgages. I'm all in. This is all I want to do. This is all I care about." And I think you're right. That's what it takes to succeed. Eddie, I greatly appreciate this. Thank you so much. Your company's awesome. Your staff is amazing. As a person who just joined the brokerage, the broker side, EPM has been such a tool as we embark on building this business, and eventually, hopefully,
I'm glad that we can do something for the consumer, and I'm glad for the opportunities. I'm glad we're doing the right thing, because that's really what it's always about.
Your staff's communication is just incredible. Lito spent 20 minutes, 30 minutes on the phone with us, knowing that we're so wrong. So without people like like your staff, like we're not succeeding, so we lean on them right now, and we're hope to pay that back and sending loans your way. Thanks so much, Eddie. I really appreciate you. Any closing message?
Be well and have a beautiful day.
Thank you. You too. Thank you, sir.
Yep.